right, guys, welcome back. This Thursday night, and so everyone knows what that means. An all new Mutant XPerience podcast. My name is Mutant XP, and tonight, very special guest, live from Nebraska, FGC mainstay and community leader. We have David Q on the show. How's it going, David?
Going great. How are you?
How you doing? So, for those of you who are wondering, we're starting a little bit early because David has an event to go to, and so let's talk a little bit about that first and foremost, David. So on Thursdays, you're obviously from the Omaha, Nebraska FGC scene, and we're definitely going to talk more about Nebraska and how they're all holding it down, not just for Third Strike, but for all the other fighting games. But every Thursday, you go to an event that runs pretty regularly.
Oh yeah, it's every Thursday, hosted by Jamar, aka Jamarvelous. It's in a not the biggest space, aka his apartment, but like we all get in there and it's packed, and I think it's really fun. They Street Fighter Five, I would say, is like the mainstay game. Like that's always there. But Guilty Gear is like the next up. But sometimes, I feel like the Guilty Gear more heavy players, we sometimes are a little like less likely to show. But for like it's like the old school Street Fighter. It's like I feel like their answer to like what the arcade used to be, because they used to show up every Friday and Saturday night, and they would play games, and then they would just talk for like hours outside of the arcade. And this is kind of like a combination of that, because they just talk and play, and it's definitely a spectacle in a way, just because everyone gets like they're real easy to get real argumentative about anything. Like every it doesn't matter what it is. Like you hear, I would say the majority is about like comic books and wrestling and video games, but that's it's not just limited to that. That's just like I would say the most likely banter, but it's fun. We just play games and um, eat food, I guess, because they bring a lot of sweets too. So
Yeah. And so where exactly is the is the get together? Like say for example, I'm somebody who just moved to Omaha. I mess with them video
Mm.
games. I like them fighting games, and I'm wondering where I can get some competition. Exactly where do I go for this Thursday get together?
It's in Jamar's apartment, which is in Southwest Omaha, and
Okay.
is apparently it's very hard to find. I've always knew about it, but like a couple new guys, it took them like a few hours to get there,
Uh
even somehow almost not that big. So like the best way would be like to just go on our Facebook group, Evil
huh.
Omaha Empire, and just say, hey, I want to come to Thursday night games, and usually people are pretty welcoming.
Yeah.
But you have sometimes people are just little they don't pay attention that much, so you got to be a little
Hmm.
persistent. But
Hmm.
if you get through, no one's gonna ever tell you no, unless like everyone's pretty cool. Sometimes people are just little they just don't pay attention to like Facebook and stuff that much.
So don't worry, Jamar. We're not going to give out your address on the podcast. I just wanted to let everyone know how to get in touch with you and David so that they can be part of what I think is a pretty awesome scene in Nebraska. And speaking of the Nebraska scene, for those of you who are unfamiliar with David Q, one of the reasons that I asked him to come on here is that a lot of newer generation Third Strike players aren't really aware of just how important the Nebraska scene was in blowing Third Strike up in America. Nebraska was one of those first places where Japanese Third Strike players visited. There's of course the legend of Ncubed, the tournament where not just Japanese players attended, but also players from SoCal attended, like Pyro Lee and Frankie 3S. And so, obviously, for those of you who've been watching the podcast, you know that I'm big on history, and I feel like, it's time that before we get any older, people start telling their stories, and these stories are recorded. For those of you who follow the podcast, um, on season one, I had a newer, I guess like we could call a newer gen Nebraska
For
player,
sure, yeah.
Eat, on, and just so I thought, there was some things, that Eat talked about, but I really felt like I needed to bring on someone that was truly at there at the beginning. And obviously, David was somebody that was there. And we were talking before the podcast, David, like I recognize you, man. Like I don't even like like I know that I've seen you somewhere, and so obviously we've seen each other in previous Evos.
I think
So I
so.
mean, if I've seen you at the first few Evos, then you're definitely old school, and
I
so
Okay, I'll give it that. I'll give it that. I just
you
always
know,
the other Street Fighter players are just a bit older than me, so like I always
yeah,
felt like new school to them, but that was like 20 years ago now, so it's kind of
yeah.
like
So that doesn't really matter
no, it
anymore,
does.
really. But eats a little even, yeah.
For sure. No, he came in like I would say I don't know. It's like it's been so long. It's really hard to like recall like the
Mm.
time frame of things. Like I can remember an order, but I don't remember like it was like 5 years later, and then it's been like 20 years. It's crazy.
Yeah. But forget Eat. He was already on the show. Fuck him. He was already on. So let's talk a little bit about you, David. And obviously a lot of these blanks are gonna get filled as we talk about how you got into fighting games. So yeah, tell us about you, man, as a player, because for those of you who don't know David in the Third Strike community, you're also quite a figure in Guilty Gear, and also you also play Smash as well, right?
Yes.
Just because I'm now retired from play, and so now I'm a full time Third Strike journalist, so I do my homework. You know what I mean, like a good journalist should. So I know that you have quite the history of Guilty Gear, and you also mess with the Smash. And later on in the podcast, I definitely want to talk about because the Third Strike community tends to be really isolated
Hmm.
from a lot of other scenes,
I
and
noticed this.
yeah, and I always marvel at people like yourself who can kind of float right
Hmm.
in between scenes, and who are really good at different games and stuff like that. So we're definitely gonna talk a little bit about what you see as in terms of similarities and differences between the three scenes.
For sure.
But before we get into that, let's talk about you, David.
Okay.
How did you get into video games? How did you get into the FGC? Lay it on me. Let's start from the beginning.
Uh,
How did this all happen for you?
I mean, I feel like growing up as a kid, we always played like Street Fighter. This was with my family, my brother, and stuff, and it was never serious. And we had this really great arcade, Family Fun Center in town. And when I became like 12, 13, 14, I started like always asking my mom to take me up there, drop me off, and I
Mm-hmm.
didn't even play the fighting games at that point. I just kind of looked at them, and I looked at like the people playing them. And fast forward a few years after that, I started working there when I was 16, and then I started to like see all the fighting game players and meet them, and I just started going up there and playing with them. And it I feel like the first game I played was Tekken, and I think back on it now because I'm not a 3D fighter at all, and those guys Omaha isn't really either. Like we had some okay Tekken players like over time, but it just never was like no, it was never this. Definitely was a Street Fighter centered city. And I just started hanging out and playing games. And I feel like it was a bit casual at first, but it was like a year into that when like Ncube happened, and then a couple other big tournaments they threw. There was like a string of pretty big tournaments over like a couple of years. That's what really like got me into wanting to be good, like wanting to play hard and wanting to travel. And like Guilty Gear, we had a manager at the arcade who was really into like Japanese culture, Japanese arcades, and he got the arcade owners to not only get a bunch of DDR machines way back then, which was like kind of they got like a bunch, and there was no other arcades around here, anything that had that. We didn't know what that was. And
Mm-hmm.
he also got them to get Guilty Gear, and we had no idea what that was either. He was just like, "Hey, I got this really cool game, man. You guys should try it out." And I ended up like falling badly in love with it. And that was like so it existed alongside Third Strike, and it still was a Street Fighter, centered thing. But as like Street Fighter kind of like four came out and just it started like Third Strike, it started like kind of fade away. Guilty Gear was just kind of like still gaining momentum, so it was always there. And a lot of the Third Strike players, I would say mainly Jamar, aka Jamarvelous, and Simon, aka Young, the three of us like we kind of like became this like little Guilty Gear triad. I would say like there's other players, but the three of us, we played a bunch. And I don't know if Street Third Strike was still sort of around, but it just wasn't as predominant. But somehow, like I feel like I just learned to play just being around those guys. Like when I started playing, like when I started trying to go hard, I was just shocked at like how well I did because I felt like I never really put any effort into it, but I feel like just because I was around it so much, it really like now, like, 20 years later, I'm just it's helped me a lot just watching those guys play. Just seeing all that stuff in action, and it's really those like string of terms and Ncube mainly that like again really made me want to like play hard, go hard in these games and start traveling and stuff.
Hmm. So you were 16 when you got a job at Family Fun Center.
Hmm.
Well, what did you do there? Just kind of
Just like
were you?
like general, like gave redemption prizes and made pizza, just like stupid arcade crap that
Uh-huh.
like that like the grunt work that was never fun. But the cool thing about it is like we would get off, and since I was like such a low worker at that time, you'd get off a little bit early, and the arcade didn't close till 1 on the weekends, and those guys always stayed till 1, and then they would stay outside till like 4 a.m., 5 a.m., like just literally outside the door in like a group, just talking and doing whatever. And that's like really what got me into it, because I would just go up there and then I would hang out with them, and just kind of like it was just like a progression over time of like that. And the whole time I was working at the arcade I worked there for 4 or 5 years, and then I worked
Uh-huh.
there as a tournament organizer um, for maybe 4 years after that, which was a really good deal because they
Hmm.
would pay me to my hourly rate to run a tournament, which most
Wow.
TOs at that time didn't get paid nothing. Like that was pretty
Yeah.
unheard of too. It was definitely like a labor of love back then.
Hmm. So when did you first meet? Because I know you'd already dropped some names that some people in the chat might be familiar with, like for example, Jim Marvelous, and Grimlock, Cameron Buckner,
Mm-hmm.
True Karate on
True,
SRK.
true karate.
When like if you had to build a Mount Rushmore of Nebraska Third Strike, who would be on this Mount Rushmore?
So four players are because
Yeah.
because when I think about it, like I think about the 5-on-5-on-5s that happened at Ncube,
Hmm.
and it's
Uh-huh.
it's hard to like kind of count one of them five out. Like I don't know who I would
All
drop out of
right.
that
Well,
five
you,
spot.
can-
Uh,
it doesn't have to be like an exact Mount
okay,
Rushmore.
okay, okay.
You can add that other person.
So like okay, so there's of course Grimlock, aka
Hmm.
Cameron, aka True Karate.
Hmm.
I feel like he was like the prodigy of the group. You know what I mean? Like he was really good, and he would play like all the characters and do cool shit, especially for back then. He was just like he
He's
was
a
like
natural.
yeah, and he
He's a
was
natural.
definitely
Like,
like the most versatile. Like
yeah.
he did a lot of things well, and
Every
Jamar,
scene has that, right?
yeah,
Every
for
scene has the
sure.
natural, the
For
guy that just gets it right away.
and I think like but his like biggest drawback it seemed like is he didn't know when to like let down. He never knew how to let off the gas, and that's
Yeah.
why I would see his downfall. And I feel like
Uh-huh.
so like I feel like Jamar was kind of like the opposite of that in the way of just
Uh-huh.
maybe he didn't know how to gas it hard enough, but he was the same way. I feel like he was really good, really versatile, did a lot of stuff really well. I just felt like he was way more reserved than Cameron. So those
Much more solid, much more
yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah.
rock steady. Just like you could
Uh-huh.
always count on that. And that's what I and I mean I don't know if he played Chun back then, but I know he eventually started playing Chun, so it just kind of like fit. Like hey, I'm just gonna be this. Yeah, I'm just gonna stand here. And so then next I would say Simon, aka Yu Young. Um, I didn't know how good Simon was until like I seen him in the 5-on-5 beat. They were doing the 5-on-5 and he just wrecked. I didn't even know I don't know all the five squad of the Japanese back then, but he just like wrecked a couple of people, and I didn't know it was gonna be like that. I thought they were just gonna own, like I didn't think that they had a shot. And I guess I don't know why I thought that, but you just see people coming from across the world. You don't know, like they're obviously serious. And he played a Kuma at the time, and I don't I don't know how to describe his style. It's like traditional Nebraska style. What I mean is like Shoto, and they like the upper, and
Mm.
I don't know I don't know how to put it. Like that's like I feel like that was his style. But he just
Uh-huh.
did it really clean. And
Uh-huh.
so next I would say is Butch, aka that's what I think that was his tag. He's a weird dude. He's a weird dude. His name was Butch. He was
Uh-huh.
he's sort of strange. And his style was really strange. He played Alex, and
Uh-huh.
it was like weird. Like it didn't make a lot of sense. And we always thought it was good, but he definitely put it to the test and showed us it was good because
Uh-huh.
it was like it's so hard to explain. There was no playbook behind it, at least for us. To us to understand. He definitely had it, I guess, in his head, but
Uh-huh.
it was a very unorthodox game he played, and it would work. It worked out for him. So, and then there's him, and then like finally there'd be Daytrick. Daytrick, or I don't know if he had a tag either. They just call him Daytrick.
Uh-huh.
I feel like he's like, of the five, he's like the founding father of the group, or the, I don't know. He I feel like our Street Fighter scene is really sort of molded around the way he played the game and the way he like approached the game, and just all that, because he he's a bit older than the rest of the guys, I feel like, or maybe not all of them, but besides that, he was just kind of like the old school, really really good one. And again, like I said, Nebraska, like the upper thing, he was like, that's like he lives and dies by that. Like he it's just like what he installed in everyone, I feel like. And
Hmm.
even me not even playing Third Strike like that back then and playing other games, if I had a DD character, you better believe I'm DPing all the time. And like to the point where it's like it's frustrating either to whoever's getting hit or to whoever like I'm not hitting, and they're like, you're stupid, like what are you doing? Like why are you acting like this? But
Hmm.
it's because that's just kind of how I feel like it was, the scene was built. So it's like, so it's Daytrick, Butch, Cameron, Jamar, and Simon. Those are like the five, like Mount Rushmore of Third Strike. Like those were the guys. And
Hmm.
there was other players. There's a whole bunch, but those are the ones that like, were definitely the standouts.
Hmm. And out of all those players, I mean, I know that Simon, I got to see Simon again at NEC a couple years ago, and he made top eight in Third Strike. Obviously Grimlock's always online
Oh yeah, oh
on the
yeah.
grinding on that XBL. I've seen. I think the last tournament I saw Jamar in was I think maybe I don't know if you guys did. You guys go to Combo Breaker?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. So I know that wasn't streamed, but I heard that you had like 50 players there or
Yeah,
something enter a side
it
tournament.
was
That was
way
amazing.
deeper than like it took for it. Some of the, yeah, it was, they weren't ready for that because I think there was like three setups.
Yeah,
But
right.
yeah, it was
They probably were just thinking like 10 people were gonna enter, right?
no, it was good though. I mean,
Yeah.
it was awesome to see that. I think Jamar got seventh. I outplaced him somehow. Hey, um, because I can't even remember. I think I got fifth, and I think he got a place underneath me. So
Uh-huh.
because we both got beat by the same dude in a row, basically. So if he would have won his
Uh-huh.
winner side, we would have end up facing each other. And
Yeah.
that's just how I know, like, placed like that. But
But
yeah,
as far as Butch and Datrick, I mean, they don't really play that often
no,
anymore.
like Butch is like a myth at this point. Like
He's a
I'm serious. Like I don't even know if he lives in
the urban myth.
I don't even know if he lives in Omaha anymore. Like I hear about him sometimes because Cameron and him were pretty good friends.
Uh-huh.
And Cameron will be like, oh hey, I talked to Butch or something. And but as far as seeing him, I don't know the last time I've seen it. It's been like years. And
Uh-huh.
Daytrick, I would say he's still good at the game, but he stopped really liking to play Third Strike because he shows up to like Thursdays like almost always.
Yeah.
He's like he loves to play video games, and so he supports it. But like, at least according to him, he hates to play Third Strike on not the arcade cabinet. Like
Hmm.
he
Hey, there are a lot of players that are like that.
for
Like
sure, for sure.
there's so many players who refuse. They think that playing Third Strike on anything but a cab is not really Third Strike.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like
and I mean, it's been when the game was born that way, but not only born that way, but was that way for what, like 10, 11 years or however long. Like it's kind
mhm,
of hard to like dispute that. Like it's gonna be different. And
definitely, definitely. Yeah, and so I guess out of those five players, um, only half of them really play still.
I mean, I
Um,
would say out of the five, like Cameron is the one who like
mhm,
plays. Other than that, Jamar will play if we pressure him to play.
mhm.
And
Or if
Simon.
it's tournament.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. If there's like they're running the tournament, yeah, you're right. If there's a tournament, he'll definitely get into it. And but I just mean like outside of that, like he doesn't really, I don't know if he doesn't have an interest or if he's just more interested in other games. But I mean, they played the game for so long, so it could be a lot of reasons. I never really asked him, but him and Simon will enter tournaments still. And other than that, like Daytree will enter a weekly or a local, but I don't think he like well he went to Combo Breaker, I believe, but he didn't like enter Third Strike, you know.
Mm. And so, when was the first time you met those guys? Do you remember? Like, sort of roughly when you first met them?
It was like when I started working at
Okay.
at Family Fun Center, like when I was 16, which was in like 2001, 2001 ish,
Hmm.
2002. Um,
Yeah.
and I mean, again, they're a bit older than me, so it was like pretty intimidating, you know. Like, 'cause
Mm.
I had seen them plenty of times, but I didn't have like I didn't like have enough to approach them until until a while into it.
Hmm. And but when you finally did, like, just how was that, like, sort of?
It
How did that go in terms
it,
of?
it so it was good. It was great. I mean, they're all generally really cool dudes, you know. And like the thing about I feel like I was just having a discussion I think with Jamar about like back in the arcade days, it was so it could be so aggressive at times, and not the game, like just like the atmosphere.
Hmm.
That it would scare people off, you know. And we were talking, I was like, there's probably like potentials that probably would have been good, but like you guys are so rowdy and stuff, they were not okay. They didn't know how to handle. They had never dealt with something like that, so they like, they're like, I'm not coming back here. But when in reality, they weren't. There's nothing that was really going to happen. It's just, they were just having fun. But it
Uh-huh.
was so like again, it was like it could just be so aggressive feeling at times that again, like for me, like I've seen them plenty of times, but I was like nervous to approach, like
Uh-huh.
because they're they're being loud and having fun. What it turned out to be, which on the surface, if you don't know anything about it, know anything about them, fighting against stuff, you might just be like, these guys are mad at each other, these guys are
Yeah.
angry dudes, and
Uh-huh.
so no, it once I actually got to know everyone, I mean, like definitely of those five, like a few of them are definitely like became like some of my best friends, So
Hmm.
um, it it was. I'm really glad I decided to step up there and go talk to them because they were like the ones who like showed me the way.
Hmm. So tell us a little bit about your role at Ncube, because obviously you were already working. Ncube it took place at the Family Fun Center,
Yep,
right?
yep.
And so you had already been working there
Mhm.
when it took place. And so, what was kind of your role during the event? I mean, what were you
I mean,
kind of asked to do there?
I feel like just like my early days working at FFC was like because it was like my early tournament days, my
Uh,
first exposure to like kind of being involved in running tournaments and things, and I was basically like the like the runner boy,
uh-huh.
the hey, we need this right now, hey, sit here and collect money, like not, like I'm definitely like no decision making or anything. I was just like kind of like the hands that they an extra pair of hands that they needed, an extra pair of legs to go do this or move this machine or get these chairs or which it was just me getting my like hands in. It was me first stepping into it, so that's it is what it is. But it definitely I'm glad I did because not
Did
only
they even let you enter?
yeah, no, they did, and
Okay.
which is nice. And I think at that time, though, I basically only thing I would entered was CVS 2, and
Uh-huh.
because like that was like it was because it was really popular back then too, and that I just didn't feel comfortable enough with Third Strike, and seeing like everybody there like that is just like really intimidating. Like
Yeah.
I wasn't ready, but so I think I entered CVS 2, and they would have let me enter whatever I'm sure. So they were cool about it, and they definitely had enough. The FFC, they definitely realized kind of how big it was for like especially
Mhm.
for the time, and they didn't like, in my opinion at least, like spare like cut corners or anything as far as what they foresaw as like like having enough chairs or just things that kind of like could get overlooked in that time real easy because you don't really know what it's like. The tournaments had never been that big for us ever like that. It blew up, so that was like such a, a huge leap forward from anything we had ever had. I mean, it was just nuts. Like so, uh,
Mhm.
it was good. I mean, they had a lot of people working, and I just happened to be one of them.
Mhm. So a question that I had, because I don't think Eat was able to answer this in the last podcast, or maybe I didn't even ask it. But exactly how did the Japanese end up in a place like Omaha, Nebraska? Like, you
well,
know what I mean? Like, it's
well,
just, to this day it just sounds so random.
well,
Like, how on earth did this happen?
so this is like, trust me, I've asked this too, and the answers I get the general, what seems to be the real answer, which seems just as far fetched as them coming here, is
Uh-huh.
that Grimlock, aka Cameron Buckner,
Uh-huh.
um, got on some message boards where they talked, I don't know
Uh-huh.
what, and he just started talking a lot of shit,
Uh-huh.
saying how he would beat them and how we could beat them here and how if they came here
Uh-huh.
they wouldn't win. And
Uh-huh.
I don't know, he must have did it real good because they came here.
See, this what I'm talking about. Sometimes talking shit is productive,
Agree,
right?
agree. Oh yeah, like yes. And so that it disturbs me. Like this is a perfect example where like it disturbs me when I see like some people going real hard and like trying to like I don't know. The I understand like it can go too far, but at the
Yeah.
same time it can like produce some really competitive,
Special
spectacular.
moments.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what competition is, right? So it's.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, not to get too sidetracked, but obviously, you're very involved in the current scene, whether it be Third Strike, Smash, or Guilty Gear.
mhm.
Um, is that you think is that something that you wish, kind of like the newer generation players had, or have you just
Oh
pretty much
yeah.
accepted that they're just
No,
kind of they're different and
I do no, trust me. It's especially it's hard because just I see the amount of I don't want to say complaining, but just I guess complaining, but just the culture around like that specific thing, like the trash talk and
mm,
like I don't know. I heard that like Killer Instinct you couldn't like taunt or something. I heard there's like making crazy rules like that, or I don't know, and it's blowing my mind because yeah, I wish that they would people newer players would realize like the the things that can be gained from this. And like I said, I understand that it can go too far, but it can also, like you said, produce some really special moments. It's like it can hype some things. So like, sure, if you have two good players playing and they're gonna play and it's set up to play, it's gonna be cool. But if they're like a lot of hype before that, a lot of like, hey, I'm gonna whip your ass, or hey, you can't beat
mm,
me, or just what, it's just gonna make it better. It just makes it makes it a richer experience for everybody, in my opinion, unless
mm,
like somebody actually gets punched or something. But I feel like that's rare. Like most of us don't go that far. No one, especially you know, no one really like wants to fight anyone. We want to fight them in the game. That's what we do. So I
mm,
wish, yeah, I wish the newer generation could like kind of get on board with that more. Not to say some aren't, but it's just kind of frustrating the ones that are like really disturbed by it. And it's like it's cool, dude. Like we're just having fun. We're just having a great time and I guess this is the new gen. It's how it is.
yeah. I mean, I'm curious to, I mean, obviously you're welcome back to the podcast anytime, but I'm curious to get your thoughts post TFC, because obviously you eat and I guess a couple of other Nebraska players. I don't really know exactly who's all coming, but you're planning to go to TFC.
Yep.
Uh, Third Strike is going to be really big.
Yep.
I think Biggie shot out a tweet a few days ago saying that they have 70 players pre-registered for Third Strike.
Nice.
Um, Obviously, there's going to be 5 Japanese gods coming.
Yeah.
Uh, Players from 20 different states, 4 different countries. I mean, it's going to be huge. And so I'm curious to get your thoughts on like what you thought about TFC and the experience, because
For sure. I mean, I haven't traveled for
uh,
this is like my first time traveling for Third Strike in
uh-huh.
particular.
Wow.
Like I've played Third Strike places, but it's never been like the game that I was focusing on. The game that
Mm-hmm.
just that I feel like right now I'm playing more Third Strike than anything else, and it's always just been kind of like this on the back burner thing.
Mm-hmm.
And because of TFC, and just because I feel like I've been getting better, and so has like so has E, and Cameron's just good, and some of the other players are just good, and just being able to compete with those guys because I never used to be able to. You play them and they would they, they would beat me down because I think there's a little animosity behind it because of like the way we played Guilty Gear, and I kind of like got ahead of everyone there, so they never wanted me to let them get ahead of them in Third Strike, and it definitely was like
Mm.
definitely like transition to their play. They're like there was no letting up. Like if they played me, they played me hard, and even if it was always beating me down. So now that I'm like being able to compete, I don't know. I'm really stoked that like Third Strike is seemingly having like this comeback, I guess, like it is, because
Mhm.
I hear I hear people talking about Third Strike randomly now. Like, I met a friend, old friend. I just ran into him at like a party, and he was like, "Hey, this is my buddy." And I was like, "Oh, hey," and he was like, "Hey, you play games, right? I'm really trying to get into Third Strike." And this was random. It's like, what?
Wow.
Yeah, right? That's what I said. I was like, crazy.
Wow.
Like, that's dope, dude. Like,
Mhm.
I think a big part of that is our local barcade. They got Third Strike, and a lot of those
Okay.
guys, you know, they like to play it, and then they see it on Twitch. You know, like they see it, it's being streamed and stuff a lot more, and I guess people are noticing, and not only noticing but wanting to play. So, yeah, I mean,
Mhm.
I'm excited for this tournament to see, you know, how it goes, and just like again, it feels like, to me, it feels like Third Strike is like gaining momentum again.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, hopefully, hopefully TFC. I don't see any reason why TFC is not going to be a huge success.
Yeah,
It's all of the pieces are in place, so to speak. So actually, on that note, I think maybe now would be a really good time to take a break, and then when we come back, I want to go ahead and just kind of talk a little bit more, just a little bit more about Ncube
oh,
and
for
kind of
sure.
the aftermath because one of the things that I've noticed that's kind of similar in your narrative and in Eat's narrative, that Third Strike definitely took kind of a bit of a downturn, after that. But I do also want to talk about Evo because you were supposedly at those earliest
I
Evos,
were
and
I was.
I definitely like to get your thoughts and maybe if there are any stories that you remember
Oh, for sure.
going there. So once again, guys, you're watching the Mutant Experience podcast. Tonight, I have with me Nebraska FGC mainstay David Q. So we're gonna take a quick break, but we'll be back in a couple minutes. So don't go anywhere. All right, guys, we're back with more Mutant XPerience podcast. Once again, my guest tonight is David Q from the Nebraska FGC, old time Third Strike, Guilty Gear, and Smash player. And so, David, let's talk a little bit more about Ncube. Are there any stories that you remember, or anything that you remember that sticks out from that
Um,
whole experience?
okay, like one thing that I feel like I was too young to be there and not
Mm-hmm.
Ncube, but in the moment, but like that I hear stories of is, well, some of the some of the Street Fighter players, they they grew up from some like really hard spots, and
Mm-hmm.
some of them still lived in those really hard spots, and apparently some of them like had like like a few of the Japanese players over there where it's just like, hey, this is dangerous, guys. Like they would talk. They didn't tell them that. I'm sure they just talk about it, like how they were hanging out with so and so, and like, oh, right across the way is like, don't walk over there because it's kind of dangerous. And I just don't think that, like, I think about like from the Japanese players' perspective, they probably like no idea how, like, because some parts of Omaha, like, believe it or not, like, are, at least I think it's gotten better, but especially like back in that era was like pretty dangerous. It was not like a kosher place to be after like after dusk, or even just in certain times. And they were just hanging out playing games there, like they just brought them there, and like no big deal. And again, like I'm sure the players that they did have there had no idea, like just kind of like the the potential of what was happening around them.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, other than that, just besides like actually like the tournaments happening, like I don't know. Like that's what like the takeaway was for me. Just the watching the 5-on-5s and like watching these really hype matches, and they were just so competitive. And even back then, it just kind of it seemed like it wouldn't be, even though we had never really seen too many Japanese players play. You know what I mean? It was
Mm-hmm.
definitely way more. There wasn't YouTube, and it was very much a mystery to us more than anything. And seeing like the guys come out and like really play hard and compete was like amazing, because it's like it was inspiring.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, definitely. So after Ncube, you said that you started working as a tournament organizer. And so, what are some of the things that you did sort of after Ncube to kind of capitalize on all that hype that you created from that big tournament?
So
Uh,
okay, I mean, oh, it was really hard actually, because
mhm,
the owner of the arcade, his name is Chad. He so after Uncubed, I feel like maybe there was one more big tournament that we ran. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if there actually was. Uncubed might have been the last one. We had one scheduled though, and he canceled it like a month before it was
mhm,
supposed to go down. And I mean, this was like after Uncube and stuff, so people were like trying to come out. People were like buying plane tickets like way in advance, and
mhm,
he like it really killed that like momentum we had for like everything at the Family Fun Center. Like that, it was like and not to say I didn't run tournaments there, but it kind of switched focus, because I could because people were like really disgusted by what and for right, they had the right to, because it definitely, like, I feel like there was a handful of players, maybe like 5 or 10, that didn't have refundable tickets, and they just showed up anyways. They didn't know
wow,
what to do. Like, you didn't know what to do at that point, so they just came and they hung out. And um, even when I think about it now, it's like so disturbing, because I definitely wasn't like, I didn't have, like I said, I didn't have as big of a role, or like have like the decision making potential back then. But I really wish that could have gone down some other way, because we had like the momentum that could have carried us so hard, so far. And I don't think I don't think the owner of everything, he realized just the potential of, he didn't see the FGC, like he didn't foresee it to being like it is today. And I feel like us as the players, I don't know if I foresaw it, but that's what I hope for. You always
mhm,
wanted it to like just get bigger and grow, and hope that that was going to happen. It totally did, and we totally kind of blew it in a way, with what happened. So like once I started like really becoming the tournament organizer and like mainly doing it, it was that's I started like doing games like Smash, because like there was
mhm,
still interest, and it was actually a lot of interest. And it was just, it was hard. It was like, again, what happened and what went down was really a bummer. and
Mhm.
I eventually just stopped working there and started running my own tournaments like on the side. And I did a play on Ncube. I ran a tournament called O Squared because I didn't know
Mhm.
I didn't call it. So it was the Omaha in October,
Mhm.
and this is when I was like a couple years into Guilty Gear, and I was like really into it. And it was primarily just a Guilty Gear tournament. Like there was, I don't even think we ran any other games. So it was like, it wasn't Street Fighter centered at all. But it was really good. We got a lot of people, but it wasn't at FFC. It just the only thing that was FF, the only thing that was like reminiscent was the name still. So I don't
Mhm.
know.
So another thing that I mentioned earlier on the stream is that you look really familiar, and it has to have been because I've seen you at previous evolutions. And so, do you remember what the first Evo you went to was at?
It was Cal Poly.
Was it 2004?
Four.
Was it the
Yeah.
Daigo
Yeah. Yeah.
Perry?
Yeah. Yeah. It was that time. It was that time.
So
Um.
it was the Daigo Perry.
Yep.
Do you know who went with you?
Uh.
Was it just you, or
No.
was
It
it?
was it it was this guy in the community named Chris.
Uh,
I don't remember his tag because we just called him Drunk Chris because he was
Drunk
yeah,
Chris?
cause
Okay.
like he had a tag. I can't remember what it was, but we just referred to him as Drunk Chris because he
Uh-huh.
was. I mean, he was a really cool guy and a lot of fun. He just would get out of hand sometimes, I'd say, and it was just me and him. Like I don't know how it ended up being just me and him going, but me and him went,
Uh-huh.
and I mean that was like I was just out of high school, and that was like the first. That was a unique experience and an eye opening experience, and I mean it was great. I'm so glad I went. It just was.
Uh-huh.
I didn't know him that well, but we went together, and I think I'm pretty sure we're the only ones from Omaha to go that year, which was unfortunate, but that's just the way it went, I guess. And I'm glad I went. It was like one of the best, one of the definitely. I don't know if say the best experiences, but being that young and being able to get exposed to all that, it definitely was. I guess it was great. I don't think I even played Third Strike though. I think I probably only played Guilty Gear.
Yeah, how'd you place in Guilty Gear at
I
Evo?
was one away from top eight, and
Oh wow.
I I totally dropped my way into top eight too. Like I had it, and it was like, and that's what. So it was the most beneficial thing that could have happened to me, like in retrospect, because it really let me like taste, like almost taste it, and
Uh-huh.
that like that burned in me for so long because I was so inexperienced, and like here I was like about to make fighting for the next one to be top eight, and there was just like I'd never been in a crowd like that. I never had that many people watching me play, and to like win it, but then not at the last second because you dropped it. It was like the most heartbreaking thing that had happened to me up to that point, like in my life. I swear, like I remember the guy Chris who was with. He was like the only like I had I guess made some friends, but he was like the only one that like I went to like I didn't know what to do. I had never felt that way before. And he just looked at me. He's like, "I know you want to cry. You should just cry." And I was like, "I'm not gonna cry." I don't know. It was hard, but I'm glad I went. It was cool. Like definitely, and it was
Mhm.
definitely like the third strike moment, all that stuff that is in the last time before it was at Vegas, and I don't know. I don't. Was there many Evos before that? Maybe like a couple.
Um, I think there were. I think the first Evo was 2000. Shit. Okay, so there was Evo 2004. That was the Justin moment,
Mm,
and then there was the Evo before that in 2003.
okay.
I distinctly remember that there was an Evo before that.
Okay. So
I'm not sure if there was an Evolution in 2002. That might have been something else, Battle of the Bays or something like that. Um, but I know for sure the first Evo I sort of went to was 2003, but I wasn't really even playing Third Strike right away at the time. I just went with a friend because he said, "Hey man, there's because I was dating someone who went to Cal Poly
okay, that's
at the
dope.
time,
Hey,
and so I
hey.
was like, hey, let's but I didn't enter in that turn. I didn't enter anything in Evo 2003. The first Evo I entered was 2004. Um, so yeah, that's wow, that's like what 13 years
Oh,
ago.
it's a long time. It's a long time ago.
Fuck.
I mean, when was
Fuck.
Ncube? Was that before that?
That was before that. That was
Okay.
before that. Yeah, it was like
Yeah, okay, because I was like
2000.
16. Okay, yeah, it was. Damn,
Yeah,
that's like
yeah, yeah.
2001 or something,
Yeah,
2002.
it's 2001. It was 2001.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
I remember for some reason like I always I like Like I remember like my first Family Fun tournament, I played Ed Maw. You may remember
Yeah,
Ed
no, I
Maw,
definitely remember. No, for
Don't
sure.
Count Ken player. Um, and I think the first person I played, actually, in my first ever Evolution Third Strike match was Eddie Lee. You remember Eddie
Oh
Lee
yeah, he
from Chinatown Fair,
yeah,
New
I was gonna say
York?
from New York. Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah,
He's really good.
yeah,
that
and then I think I lost to like a Makoto player or something. I don't know. I don't
that
remember.
that happens
But
with best of us, I think.
but you sort of redeemed yourself at the next year's Evolution, right? Because you did really well. You did pretty
I
well at Guilty Gear
I ha-
in 2005, right?
I I had a lot of good showings at Evo
Mm-hmm.
for Guilty Gear. Again, like I said, like it's so long ago and like over such a
Uh-huh.
long span, I definitely have like a hard time remembering what year I did like better and stuff. But I think it was the next year. Oh, I had searched my name and I this had came up not that long ago, and I was like looking, I was like, this is so old. Damn, I'm looking nice back then. Like I think I
Yeah,
was better
this
back
is you
then.
against this is you against Mago
I was like,
from the Evolution DVD.
that's sick. Oh, I'm on the Evolution
Yeah,
DVD.
you didn't even know you were on Evolution DVD. Gotta get those royalties, son.
Yeah, right. Pay
No, I'm
me.
just
At least
kidding.
let me in.
Yeah, but
Sick.
I remember Evo 2000 Evo 2005 was the first one in Vegas,
Mhm.
which I felt was kind of false advertising because you know when they said Vegas, I thought like oh the Strip,
Oh
right?
yeah, no,
But
you
remember it
well
was at
Green
the Red
Valley.
Rock
Yo, fuck that. Yeah, man.
or whatever
Green Valley
Green Valley
Ranch.
Ranch. It was like 20 miles
It
away from like or
we
whatever.
were at some. We were stranded on a desert island there, dude.
It
Like,
really felt like we were stranded on a desert island.
I was just.
It was such bullshit,
Thank God,
you
like I
know?
love the games because, yeah, we weren't in Vegas. We were just at some random
Yeah.
spot where everything cost $1 million. Like, pay like ten
Oh,
dollars.
it was so expensive there. I remember
Yeah,
too.
that's yeah. I was so happy when they like finally because the next year it was at like the clone of that place, the Red Rocks, which it was the same place but red. And I think it was finally the next year where they like started moving to the Strip. I think, or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe
Yeah.
they did those places for like a bit longer. But yeah, you're
I think for
yeah
a couple years they were at the Green Valley Ranch.
right. That yeah,
No, no,
it's
wait, wait, no. Wait. In 2006, yeah, in 2006 we moved. Oh shit, I think we moved to the Strip because 2006 was when they did the regional evolution tournaments.
oh okay
You
okay
remember
yeah
that?
I
They did
do
like
I do.
Evo North, Evo South. Yeah, and I made it out of Evo West in 2006. I just don't remember that casino.
Which one?
I think we were on the Strip by 2006.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think
I
so.
again like it's like such a is that like that's 11 years ago, dude.
Yeah, that's a really long time. So let's kind of switch gears and let's talk a little bit about you know the scene today. Before we take our second and final break. So you had said a really funny story during the first segment, David, like that you just had some random guy just kind of like say, you know, hey, you know, I'm trying to get into Third Strike,
Mhm.
and you know, you know, like that's really cool, and I kind of wanted to talk about it on the stream because I think it's like it's just really amazing that just some random guy like because you're saying that that's not like the first time or the only time that's happened that
No,
there are people
yeah, it's
that are just coming up to you and just you know talking about Third Strike for some reason.
I also hear people yeah, well, the name escapes. You know, like the really big tournament that just happened for Third Strike in Japan.
Clash of the Titans,
Yeah,
TFC, yeah. Oh no, oh Co-op
yeah,
Cup,
Cup.
yeah.
Yeah, like I heard people like talking about it like in like passing, and I'm like, are they talking about what I think they're talking about? They like sure hell was. It's like crazy. It's
Uh-huh.
like I was like, oh, you guys watch that? It's like
Yeah.
it's cool. It's like it really seems like again, it's like it's having this like comeback, and which I feel like it's a game that is it has the potential to do that. You know, it does. I don't want to say deserves it because I don't think it just has the potential to. You know, either a game is that good and it has like that kind of play value that even after 20 years, people are gonna want to play it and want to get better. And there's
Mhm.
games that don't, you know, and this is one of those games that is like it breaks that that thing that most games don't have. It doesn't seem like it has a shelf life. It seems like it could keep going as long as people wanted to play it because the ceiling will always like it seems to always keep getting better. You know, like people seem to keep getting better, which is crazy after this long. So it's insane and it's really fun to watch too to boot. So that's like a really good. That's another good thing I think for the game and its potential to keep going is it's becoming, esports is becoming such a spectator thing that like if the game is fun to watch, then that's like already a leg up. But if the game is fun to watch and the game is really fun to play and like competitive play, then it's like the sky's the limit at that point, right?
Yeah, I actually wanted to, I'm glad that you started talking about that because obviously, as a longtime tournament organizer and as someone who is not just part of the Third Strike scene, but also part of Guilty Gear and the Smash scene,
Mm-hmm.
which is obviously, super huge.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I did want to ask you, obviously the challenges for any old game scene, right? Whether it's Third Strike or CVS2 or ST, is how do you get new players playing? Because event one day we're gonna stop, right?
I
Like,
guess.
I mean, I had 5 Star on a couple podcasts ago, and he's like, "Yeah, we're never gonna stop playing."
Right? No,
But you
that
know what?
I think that's the
It,
case for some of these games. But go ahead, go ahead.
I don't know. Inevitably, like it's gonna happen, right? Like, I
Uh,
mean, I'm a realist here. Like,
I'm
not
trying.
everyone. So my concern has always been like, how do you get new people to play Third Strike? And
Okay,
so
go ahead.
I'll start asking the tough questions, David. I mean, you already started talking about it, right, in terms
Mm-hmm.
of its appeal.
Yeah.
So you say it's fun to watch, it's fun to play, but you also said earlier in the stream that that some of the younger players that you've noticed at these gatherings on Thursday are a little sort of hesitant or to jump in or
I guess when I say that, I'm definitely not referring. So Thursday is like such a like a tight quarters, like
uh
lots of energy that like I that they people like I guess I'm referring to. If anybody does show up, they probably won't last because it's too much. It's very much like it's a lot of just that it's a lot of energy to take in, and it can be perceived as negative, I think, and it's not, but it just can be perceived that way if you aren't around, certain types of people like till you're 20 or something. I don't know. But I see this a lot at just the tournaments we have like monthlies or biweeklies, and
uh
more so I would say in the Smash scene, but not only because you see it in the other scenes too. It's just I guess I'm kind of like exposed to it more because like in the Smash scene, there's like a lot of it's very like I don't know how to call it. Just people they'll get like really upset about like people cheering or people like heckling,
mm,
just shit that like for us it was just part of the game. Like to us, like in the arcade, it was just like that's dude, that's the game. Like deal with it, like you can get mad about it, but it ain't gonna stop, like and people are getting upset to the point where like they want to like make rules about it, and do crazy things and like unless like somebody is like yelling in your face or like touching you or something, to me like it is what it is. I mean, when you used to play in the arcade, sometimes you're like shoulder to shoulder with the dude, like
mm-hmm.
it's just like you just deal with it, and I, it's just I think like the way the state of games, like being at home and being online, it's really like changed the way that people feel about that. So I don't know if you when you said earlier if it's like do I just accept it? Like I don't want to, but I feel like at some
Mm-hmm.
point I'm kind of gonna have to. But I don't think that means that like games like Third Strike can't like prosper or like can't do good still or even get bigger.
Mm-hmm. So how would you how have you in the past, like, obviously, you run First Strike tournaments every now and then in your scene. Like, how have you tried to encourage players to pick up the game?
Third Strike.
Or yeah.
Um, I mean, I would say the best I can do or I do is I'll definitely talk up Third Strike. And what I
Mm-hmm.
mean by that is just like talk, kind of like I just did, like I did to you, like just I think it's a great game. I think it has like huge amount of replay value. I think you can keep getting good at this game, and it kind of almost will never stop. Seemingly, like you can always like, and then that's true with any game, but like with Third Strike, one thing about Third Strike, like again, like if I'm talking it up to somebody, is one thing I come to find out that I really like about the game, which I always kind of knew, I sort of would, I suppose, I just had never been good enough to where it was a thing. It's just so like when you get like sick parries and then you like punish someone so hard, like there's no other fighting game I play with like that kind of feeling. It really gives you like the sense of power that none of the other games I play like do because it's kind of parrying is like definitely a mechanic that I don't understand why Capcom hasn't tried again because it's so. I mean, look at Third Strike. Like look at this game. It's fun to play. It's really competitive and it's really hard to get good at, but that's good to me. And not in a bad way though. Like you once you see results, it's really rewarding. It's really gratifying to like do good in this game. I feel like because it's so hard, and that's the best way I feel like I can help the scene because I don't know what else to really do. Like our tournament organizer right now, his name's Uli. He does a really good job, and he does Third Strike all the time. And I we to like I think about how like you can attract new players, and it's happening, but I think it's happening kind of like not on purpose. You know, they're just seeing the game. I don't know. I don't know
Mhm.
why it's just happening, but I feel like there could definitely be a deliberate way to make new players more interested faster, especially with like Street Fighter Five. And I'm not like trying to say Street Fighter Five is a bad game, but I don't think it's a very entertaining game, and I don't think it's a I don't know. If you compare Third Strike to Street Fighter Five, it's like, well, why would you play Street Fighter Five? At least that's how I see it. And I feel like a lot of players, newer players, maybe that are just getting into Street Fighter Five, if they like got the exposure right, if they got the right exposure to Third Strike, they'd be like, hey, this game's cooler than that game, you know? And
Mhm.
they just need to be exposed somehow. But how it's kind of tricky. I don't know how you do that, you know?
Yeah, definitely. I think you're on the right track though, David, because sometimes when you press too hard, you turn some people
For
off.
sure.
Just having the game there.
Mm-hmm.
I've talked about it in previous podcasts with other guests. Like for example, like Katie Alpha, he's a player from Houston, and he was telling me stories of how it was rough, like just like he would go to Smash events and just set up his little Xbox 360 and just play the computer or whatever, and
Just like try to get someone to play or
yeah, just have the game out there, and so I think that goes a long way. Just having the game there,
it does. No,
and it's even better when you have people who know how to play the game, people who played the game for a long time, like Cameron and Jamar and yourself,
it's so
just
like
kind
new
of
to look at.
playing.
Oh, no, definitely you're right. New players seeing this, like, it definitely, you know, now that you say that, it reminds me that so our barcade they have a Third Strike machine, and they had a Street Fighter Three machine for the longest time, and for whatever reason they decided to run a Third Strike tournament. I don't know kind of how. I think it was maybe Rocha, aka he like was saying they should. I don't know if he like lit the fire or what happened, but they ended up running one, and it was a really good success. And not that there was a crazy amount of people, there was a good amount of people, but it just was really like the way they had it set up, and they were all basically new players. Like, I think it was like me, Cameron, and Rocha, and for like like players that actually like played the game. But the general manager was like kind of the one running it, and it ended up being me and Cameron in the finals, and it was really hype, and everyone was watching, and everyone had a great time. And I really feel like after that, then they decided to get the Third Strike machine, and since then I see random people like people will go up there just to play Third Strike at the bar, and it's a busy bar. It's like a popular bar, and you'll see players like they're not interested in drinking. They're just going there to play Street Fighter, and they're like new play like people. Like I said, like this guy who I met, who I had no clue he is, are like old friends that aren't gaming friends. They're just like bar friends. They're guys that go out. And they're like, hey, Street Fighter is really fun, in particular Third Strike, and that's a good way to like them having that machine there has really like I think opened people's eyes to the game, and so they'll see it and they like to play it, and then they're like Twitch and everything's so popular, they just look it up and they're like, oh hey, this game is like super fun to watch, and that's why like I feel like cooperation cup is like to me it seemed like way more people were watching it than I ever knew. Like it seems really popular.
On a lighter note, because you mentioned how one of your local bars got Third Strike. Third Strike's a lot of fun when you're drunk,
Yeah, I mean,
isn't it?
I,
Like,
I
true story, dude. True story. So I went to Co-op Cup,
mhm,
the last Co-op Cup,
that's cool.
um, and I noticed that it wasn't even Gaijin. Okay, there were Japanese players, Japanese teams that were drinking,
Mhm.
and like that were just clearly they were inebriated. Like this is the biggest you know Third Strike tournament of the year, right? But it's like I feel like something that I kind of that I found surprising is it's like as a first timer in Co-op Cup, I was like, this is this is like the WrestleMania of Third Strike, right? Like
Yeah.
this is like the big, like this is the Super Bowl, and so like everyone's gonna be super serious, and
Mm.
everyone's gonna be like really like just gung ho, like we're gonna really try to win and so forth and so on, and everyone's gonna take it seriously. And then I get the co-op cup, and it just didn't. Maybe it felt that way for some teams, but I really feel like co-op cup is kind of what you make it.
Okay,
Like
for sure.
because I feel like and again, sorry for anyone who thinks that my comments are just based out of a general ignorance of Japanese culture, but it's like I spent about 2 weeks in Japan,
Okay.
and I don't think I've ever seen Japanese people more animated than I did at Co-op Cup.
I,
Like
I hear you. No, I thought the same thing watching it, and I wasn't there. Just watching what was going on. Like, I agree 100%. And
like even Japanese players who play modern games, right?
hmm
Like the players that we know that are sponsored,
hmm
guys like Momochi and Takedo and MOV and all them. They just act a different way when they're playing five. Maybe a lot of it's because of the game. Maybe it's because there's so much money on the line. Maybe because it's a job for them now.
yeah, I'm
But I just feel like for a lot of the Japanese teams, Co-op Cup was a time to kind of have fun, and kind of let loose. And there were teams that took this to an even higher level because there were teams that were just drunk. Like every
yeah.
member, they were just and it just it just surprised me because it was like I went in there thinking everyone's gonna be really really serious
Mhm.
about the games, and I just felt like it wasn't really like that for
I
everyone
mean
at Co-op Cup.
that's awesome to me. Like, that's I think I don't know. Like, I honestly I definitely feel like I noticed that too, as in watching it and just watching just that the animatedness, the way people were just unusually inebriated, or dancing, or being I don't know if it was talking shit, but like getting hype after like popping off and stuff. Like, I feel like that was so uncommon for me to see for like Japanese like tournaments. Like, I didn't really I don't know, that was unusual to me. And maybe it's just because, like, like, you're in a team of five, you've been playing this game for, I'm sure not all of them have been playing it, from way back then, but it's like an old thing, and like with old friends, and it's just it doesn't mean
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't have to be competitive. It's just like, I don't know. I think it's awesome. Like, I think it's really great, like, that it can be that way, and that it can still be. I don't want to call it like a super serious thing, but it still is. Like, whoever wins it, there's like a lot of pride in that. There's a lot of it means something to win that tournament. It still means a lot, but yet it's still like people are just more okay with not being so serious like it is sometimes. like you often see. So that's great. I mean, I think it attributes to just being an older game, and people being around it a lot and being more comfortable. I could be wrong. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It's what it seems like.
Yeah, it's just yeah, it's just something that I noticed because like we're just because you've been talking about this sort of resurgence that Third Strike is having, and this resurgence is happening in unconventional places,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like bars, just like random neighborhoods. Like
Yep.
for instance, the Chicago scene. On season one, I had Bathtub Leviathan, aka David, from the Chicago scene, and their big arcade in Chicago. Well, I mean, the place where the Third Strike players play most in Chicago is an arcade as well. It's called Logan's. It's a bar. I mean,
Oh, okay, okay,
and
sorry. Yeah, I mean,
yeah, and so I feel like I'm sure that there are a lot of other Third Strike machines in other bars across America.
and
That are playing the game and are enjoying the game.
I feel like all it takes is like one person to, like, well, I mean, first off, you have to, like, the art whoever's running the arcade to, like, have enough. I don't want to say sense, but have, like, either a like for the game, or just know about, because, like, our arcade, for example, it's an old school kind of like American, wooden traditional cab, but they have
Hmm.
Japanese sticks in there, which kind of blew
Hmm.
my mind when I first saw that. I was like, oh, that's cool, because I had never even seen that. I had never seen that mashup before. I
Hmm.
was used to, like, the baseball bats, and
Hmm.
so obviously they cared enough about the game to do that, and then you just need, like, a couple players to, like, get a little bit of interest. And I feel like it can, like, really build on, like in our arcade, for example. It took just like a couple players besides, because the people who actually played, I don't feel like we really ever we would go up there, but there was people who were going up there like on the regular, and it just took like a
Mhm.
little bit of interest to make other people have interest, and it just sparked a bunch of people wanting to play. And you're right, it's like uh, that's not the only frontier, but I feel like that's a big one for like people who are just they're casual gamers, but then they start watching Twitch and they're like, hey,
Mhm.
these competitions look fun, and hey, this game's fun, and it's an arcade game. It's like you can't play Street Fighter Five there, like you can't play. There's just, they don't make games for arcade like that anymore. At least in America, we don't get that. So
Mhm.
it's
It's funny that you kind of label Third Strike as an arcade game because another thought I had, and I don't know if you agree with me, David, but obviously when Third Strike Online came out back in 2011, um, obviously a lot of Third Strike players like you and me were excited because we thought that this might be kind of the start of a sort of a kind of a
oh
renaissance,
for
if you
sure,
will.
for sure.
But it seems like this revival, it seems like this resurgence that you're talking about and that you're noticing and that other people are noticing, it has nothing to do with 3SO.
Yeah, it's I
You know what I mean? Like
I
it's
didn't even
almost
think
like the
about
game
that.
is so yeah, it's almost like the game is so true to its spirit, like because like historically, at least in America, Third Strike has never really been a popular
Yeah,
game.
no,
You know what I mean?
I found that out. I didn't know that until I started like going other places because here it was like it was
It was the shit,
the end all be all. It was like the greatest
Yeah.
thing ever made. And so I thought it was that way everywhere, and I was like, oh, people don't like First Strike, and I think it gained in popularity until like four came out, like, but it was real late to the game, because that game came out like in like '98 or something or '90.
99,
Yeah,
99,
and I
yeah.
feel like it wasn't even like feeling popular until like when did four come out? Like 2000, like a few years before four, and it was feeling like, oh hey, this is like a big draw, But before that, it seemed like a real side game type, side tournament type game for some reason, which I never understood because I mean from the very start I always thought Street Fighter Three was or Third Strike was, to me it was just like obviously a good game, a good competitive fighting game, and so kind of blew my mind that it just wasn't popular here in the states.
Hmm.
Fighting here is what I mean.
Yeah, and despite all that, 3SO comes out and basically, all the hardcore Third Strike players shit on it. Um, and so,
I mean,
so we can't, you know, I mean, complain about the game, complain about the port all you will, but Capcom tried,
yeah, for sure. I mean, it
and
online is better than no. I mean, in my
yeah,
opinion, it's better than not having it, right? Like,
yeah. But it's just funny how this resurgence has like nothing to do with Capcom.
yeah.
Like it's not like a manufactured,
Mm-hmm.
like it's not fueled by 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 the corporation. It's not fueled by like
Yeah,
I
no,
guess what we would call
it's a
a
real grassroots feeling,
yeah.
like just the people, like it's just because it's a good game though. That's what I think you attribute that,
Mhm.
right? Because the game is good, like and it's like just it's naturally. I mean, if it gets the exposure, it's naturally that's gonna happen because
Mhm.
especially with like the other games that are out right now. Again, I'm not trying to like trash other games, but it just there's just so much going on in this game, and there's so much potential, and there's it's just once you get really into it, it never stops. It never stops. Like it feels like you get bored of it. At least for a long. I'm sure it does happen, but it would take a really long time before you felt like you were that good. And you just oh, I don't need to play this game anymore.
Mhm.
It's always like competition.
Mhm. Yeah, and somebody in the chat, Carpet from Aladdin, had mentioned Twitch, and I feel like this resurgence, I don't know if it's caused by Twitch or it's sort of it's something that's kind of occurring sort of simultaneously, but I definitely think the Third Strike scene is benefiting from Twitch
Yeah. Oh yeah.
because
Absolutely.
I feel like I mean Twitch has been out for how long?
Uh,
I mean Twitch was
uh,
first came out when 2010,
yeah.
I think.
I
I
was
mean
gonna say
before that
five.
they
I was
had
gonna say
Justin
five. But yeah,
TV.
maybe even long. Yeah, that sounds right.
Well, I mean, but before Twitch was what Justin TV, I guess,
Yeah, I guess.
or live
Yeah.
stream or whatever.
I mean, there wasn't. I don't think Twitch was like the notable thing.
Yeah.
Before that, I would say the notable thing was like watching it after the fact on YouTube.
Uh huh.
But like, no, definitely nothing has. Twitch has definitely like changed the way people get exposed, and I think Third Strike, like I keep saying, is like a game that if shed the light on, it's gonna always come out, because it's such a good game. People really look at like what's going on, and they're really interested in playing competitively, it's like a game that is really great for that. It's like really designed to keep for the ceiling to keep rising, for people for everyone to keep getting better.
Hmm. Yeah, so basically, Twitch was released in 2011,
Okay.
basically the same year as Third Strike Online. But before Twitch, we had Justin TV and all this other stuff. Um, but even then, for some reason, there wasn't a whole lot of people streaming Third Strike. But now, you go on Twitch and there's almost always somebody streaming Third
Sure. Oh,
Strike. You
yeah, a few
know,
people, right? I mean,
and that's great. You know.
I think absolutely. I it's I mean, and without online, we probably wouldn't have that. Like a lot of those
Hmm.
are like people playing online, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah, definitely.
so like I don't knock online ever because I understand like the struggle with it for sure, but I don't. I think it's a tool, and it's like something to make the game not only have more players, but for the players to get better. And not that I'd say like I think you can learn bad habits online, but I think the trade off is way better. Like you can learn matchups that like back whenever like it was a big problem for Guilty Gear. I felt like back especially back in the old days, it's like there were so many matchups to learn, and there's like 5 people that played in your scene. Like how
Yeah.
the hell you learn all those matchups? Like how can you really
Yes.
have experience on those matchups unless you've played somebody that plays good on that, and be taught where not to when not to swing. What you can't do when you can't. You can read about it and do things like that all you want, but you step up and you have like no real experience. It's gonna
Mm.
show. You're not gonna react like you would if you got to play it even just a little bit, and that's like why online to me is so cool. You get to play.
Hmm.
You get to play all the matchups if you grind hard
Hmm.
enough.
So I think this is probably a good time to take our second and final break. We already took a because see this podcast has been so much fun, David. I completely forgot how many breaks we've taken already. We've only taken one, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So so we're gonna take our second and final break. But when we come back, David, I want to talk a little bit about TFC because obviously you're headed out there to North Carolina. Uh, Looking to represent the rich Third Strike legacy
Yeah,
of Nebraska.
I'm trying my
And
best.
so I definitely want to get your thoughts on TFC, and I want to know what you're most excited about for that trip. And then yeah, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the future of the Nebraska scene, and that's pretty much that. So for those of you who are just tuning in, this is Mutant XP. You're watching the Mutant XPerience podcast with Nebraska FGC mainstay David Q, and we will be back in a couple minutes. So don't go anywhere. All right, guys, welcome back to the Mutant XPerience. Tonight on the show, as my special guest, I have David Q from the Omaha, Nebraska FGC, Third Strike player, Guilty Gear player, Smash player. One thing that actually we didn't get to, David, and I just kind of wanted to know if you could briefly comment on this. As someone that's part of sort of multiple scenes, what are some of the see if I can choose my words carefully here. You had talked a little bit about the Smash scene and some of the problems that you had with it. But I mean, is there anything that that the Third Strike scene could learn from, for example, the Smash scene or the Guilty Gear scene or vice versa? It's
One thing that I think is, I guess, pretty interesting about the three scenes that like have, and it's
mhm,
not like I picked out these scenes because of the scene. It's just the games that like I fell to or like that I fell in love with, and so that's just where I landed.
mhm,
But one thing about all three of them, I would say, is they all, especially in the FGC, especially in like Evo, they've been like, I would say Third Strike the lesser of the three, but even still Third Strike, they're kind of like outcast. Like
mhm,
when the early days of like Guilty Gear, people were really like shunning towards us, like they, and there was a lot of there was a lot of different people who played Guilty Gear, so like I understood like why, I guess, from like a small brain perspective, I guess, but like we were like shunned a lot, and like like your game shouldn't be here, et cetera, et cetera. And when to me, even now, I think like I mean, I love like Guilty Gear is like my first love. I would never. It's I would like almost always put it above anything else, and not to say that I really mean that, but just because it's like the thing that's close to my heart, I guess. And Smash is the same way. Like when we talk about Smash, I'm talking about Melee in particular. Like Smash
mhm.
is like divided up even amongst itself.
Yeah.
Um, and so I'm talking about Melee, like for sure. And when Melee was at like Evo, it was like the same experience, which it just kind of like this is just the way it was. Like people were like, "Hey, your game shouldn't be here. This is not a real fighting game," or what? It's not worth our time. It shouldn't be here. And Third Strike, like you had mentioned before, it seems to be like its own kind of thing. It's not like the mainstream Street Fighter players, and not to say like the top players don't know how to play Third Strike, but like a lot of the newer players, they have no clue. They have no idea of like what Third Strike is capable of and like the potential there. And it's kind of, I don't know, interesting to me at least that I've like landed up in these three. And one thing that on something we were just discussing right before we took a break about like Street Fighter coming, Third Strike kind of having like starting to like come back as opposed to like decline. And like how you could make that happen harder. So with Melee, it was definitely having a decline around like 2010, 11,
Mhm,
and then they released this Smash Bros. Documentary. Like it was, I don't think anyone got paid
mhm,
for it, but it was really well done. It was really interesting, and it was just it was crafted really good, and it had
mhm,
like it totally was. So now when we in Melee, when we were at tournaments and stuff, we'll call like the younger kids, we'll call them doc kids, like document. They saw the documentary, and
mhm,
that's they knew about Smash because they're kids and they like Nintendo and stuff, but they watched this documentary and they're like, hey, Melee is this like really great thing, and like right now, like it's not unusual for me to meet like somebody that's like 17, 16, even younger sometimes, that are just new to Melee. They know how to play it because they have like there's like ways to get the game besides like having the disc now, and then so they
uh-huh,
have it on their computer. So and they're like the game is extremely technical, and they don't really know how to play it like with people competitively yet. But on the technical spot, they're like I feel like they're better than me. I'm like holy shit, and they're like just getting into it, and I think it has a lot to do with like the exposure the game got based on this documentary, and the documentary was while it was really good. They also had like they had like characters to play on. I want to say like there's like a storyline there, and
mhm.
if Third Strike could have something like that, I think the game is good enough. Like I said, it just needs the right exposure, and if it gets the right exposure, it is sort of like it's getting bigger. I think it's definitely one of those games that has like the potential to blow up, even though it's 20 years old.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, and when you use that term "doc kids," Is it ever used disparagingly, or
No,
it's not a disparaging term?
no,
It's
like
just
I mean, I no,
because I know, like, sometimes like people will use the term "09er," for example, right?
yeah,
Or
no, no. I mean, it's not at all to me, at least,
mhm.
because it's cool. Like it's I love the fact that I meet new players to this game that I love. That the game is older than them. You know, like they weren't even born. Like they weren't even born when this game came out, and yet they still have this crazy interest in the game. And again, it's I really feel like it's the exposure that the game got, and
Mhm.
but again, all this stuff can happen, but the game at the core has to be really good for this to work.
Yeah,
And like I think Melee is at its core like a really competitive, great game, and I think Third Strike is very similar. Not that they
yeah,
play similar, but just that they have like a ceiling that seems almost never ending, and that
yeah,
it's fun to watch, and it's even fun. It's more fun to play. So I
yeah. Like I don't think if I don't think if I like created a documentary on, Capcom Fighting Jam players, I
yeah.
don't think it would really matter. No, I don't want to hate on any game,
Hey,
but come on
I'm
now,
just saying,
that game is
I always try to not go down that road to you.
that game is what Eat plays that game. He likes that game.
What does he?
Eat plays that. No, I thought you said that Eat plays that
No,
game.
no, 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 no.
Oh, okay,
No.
okay. That game
He
is.
plays Third Strike,
Whew,
and I feel like
whew.
he likes Melee too.
Uh-huh.
But other than that, I think that that's just the extent of his fighting game. He doesn't branch out because he does other stuff.
Because one of the things that really stuck out in my mind at last year's Evo um, was well, I don't know if that happened in this year's Evo too. I don't think so. But do you remember at last year's Evo, like in the first finals at Mandalay
Yeah,
Bay,
yeah.
they had Melee and they had a CRT up there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and then I just thought to myself, why couldn't have that been Third Strike?
Right?
Like
No, for
how
sure. Yeah, absolutely. No,
like is that just me being like naive? Like,
mm,
yeah, of
it
course, yeah, right. Third
again,
Strike would have
like
been up there.
I really feel like Third Strike added the game at its core has the potential to like have that, but
Uh-huh.
um, I think Melee again. I feel like they're very comparable games in like how technical and how, again like the ceilings of the game, and not only that, but it's just fun to play. But Melee has the edge in the sense that it's Nintendo one thing, and so like younger
Mhm.
people are way more prone to go to Mario. You know what I mean? Like they're way more prone to
Yeah.
go to these Nintendo characters because it's just kind of that's like the progression of a gamer, right? You like, and I'm not saying every gamer, but it seems like you start at Nintendo. Like Nintendo's like the base, Nintendo's like the roots, and so because of that, like I think it's more appealing to younger players. But uh, it just again it needs exposure. Like it could definitely be the one that was up there. It could have definitely. I mean, it was the second to last game, I believe, last year, right? Melee. It was right before Street Fighter Five, and so it was like I don't know how they picked the order, but it seems like they picked the order based on interest. And
Mhm.
I mean, I think Melee does. It has like that crazy amount of interest, even though it's if you look at like the games that were on the roster, it was like the only Nintendo game. It's the only game played on a CRT. It was the only game that was more than 4 years old. Like and by like it was like 20 years old. The other game, what was the next oldest game up there? Probably like 2 years, 3 years. I don't know. But Third
Yeah.
Strike definitely has like the potential to be in that spot too.
I think it was Marvel. Marvel was the second oldest
Okay,
game,
for
or
sure. You're right. Okay, you're right.
probably. But yeah, so I guess what you're saying is, it's how Third Strike is being presented,
Yeah,
right? That could that could determine how much it blows up.
for sure.
Yeah.
I really believe that. I mean, and it's just it's a good game. Like good games should
Mm-hmm.
be played, and they just need people to show them and show them the potential and that kind of thing.
Well, speaking of potential blow ups, obviously, you're going to TFC next week, and so for those of you in the Third Strike scene who have been living under a rock, you know that on September 29th, um, Biggie and Shin Blanca are bringing TFC back this year to Raleigh, North Carolina, and at TFC we're gonna have another big Third Strike tournament, another Clash of the Titans. And for those of you who are even thinking of going, remember, guys, that the last day to register is tomorrow. Okay, so you have to register on Smash GG by tomorrow night. And so if you're even thinking of going, I mean, you can get your money refunded, if you don't go, So if you're even thinking of going, definitely register because as of now, according to Big E's tweets, there are 70 plus players registered for Third Strike. That is just mind-boggling, you know, and that's amazing, when I think about it.
Yeah, I mean,
And not only that, but there's obviously the Japanese players
oh
coming.
yeah.
RX is coming. KO, Kokujin, Issei, Yakun. I think that's it.
I mean
I think I,
that.
I think
Hey,
I
that's.
listed them all.
I feel like that's. I think that's good for the rest of us. So like,
Uh-huh.
we don't get put out like round one, and
Yeah.
just that's.
And and there are a lot of people like yourself, David, a lot of old school players that have, you know, heard the third strike call, right? And have been tempted to come to TFC. Rennick, we all remember Rennick, FFA player. I had him on a podcast last season. He's scheduled to go. So there's a lot of people coming to TFC, and so you're one of them, David. Just like personally as a player, I mean, what are some of the things that you're looking forward to the most about TFC? Because you had said that this is really the first time you're traveling for Third Strike.
Yeah.
If you don't count Evo, I guess.
Well,
But
and I just mean like
yeah,
specifically like where
yeah,
hey, I'm going to this tournament because it's about Third Strike. Not that there's
yeah.
not other games, but this is like a Third Strike center. That sort of
Mhm.
thing. I mean, I just want to play well. Like I'm most excited to like parry some shit and fuck some people up on like on like and the thing about it is like okay like I am like I guess technically old school, but people don't know who I am in Third Strike. You know what I mean? They don't know like I'm not I and I think that's like a really good advantage for me because
The unknown.
yeah, oh
Yeah,
yeah, no, I think that's a strong advantage like
yeah,
because you people tend to sleep on people who they don't know that, oh, I don't know who you are, so
yeah.
I don't have to go as hard
Or
as I
if you
need
or
to.
if you or if you or if you use a character that nobody uses.
For sure, for sure.
I think I've taken 90% of my tournament matches in history because I use a character that no one uses though.
Hey,
but
I was these strats are real though. I mean, these are real strats. Like, so no, I'm just excited to kind of like go and play a lot of, especially like the Third Strike scene as it is now. I mean,
uh,
I've been playing. I would say now for a few years, kind of hard, with, but it's just with these guys. It's like with the local guys, and I think
uh,
a lot of that just really has to do with Rocha being like so interested in the game and wanting to play all the time. Like he'd be like, "Hey, let's play," and I'd be like, "Okay, I guess let's play." And the more we played, it was like the more I was enjoying myself. The more just that it was pretty interesting to me. Like I always knew Third Strike was that good, but I didn't really understand how good it was until I started playing more. And
mm,
it's like a game that you the better you get, the more you want to push that.
mm.
It's cool like that, and you parry somebody in upper room. It's like the coolest thing, best Street Fighter experience of my life.
So in terms of characters, I know that you're mainly a Shoto player. Ken, I've seen you
I,
use Ryu
I,
in the past,
I don't use Ken actually. I think about a lot of
or
things. I don't. Ryu,
like in tournament.
yeah, in tournament, right now I'm like torn between Dudley and Denjin
Hmm.
Ryu.
Hmm.
I like Dudley the best because I just love his style. Like, just like flat. I really, and it's not even to say like I'm not technical at all. I just like to
Hmm.
jump. When I really feel great playing Third Strike is when I'm just holding forward and like either jumping or walking forward and just like, hey, do something or do something.
Uh-huh.
It's my and that's what I try to do with Dudley. And when I pull it off, it's so gratifying. It's so I love it. Like
Hmm.
so, I want to say I'm a Dudley main, but at the same time, I feel like probably my
I definitely think you should probably when the big boys come out, you should bring out that Denjin
yeah.
Ryu
I know. It's just
because there ain't gonna be a whole lot of Denjin Ryu players
you're right.
over there.
Okay, so I mean, I need to. I think I need to like, especially this tournament, because I don't think it's ready yet. I need to like, just like put my pride aside and just try to do what I do best instead of like do what I really want to do. And that's probably, it's not the best idea, and it's just like what looks cool. But Third Strike is such a styly game, and you can style so hard in so many ways.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
and I feel like my Denjin Ryu is like I like just kind of wait it out and just wait for a clean hit and then try to stun you. You know, it's
Yeah,
like
but that's how you're supposed to
I
play
get it.
Denji Ryu,
I
and
understand.
it's so fucking slimy. Like it's not
It's
like
so slimy.
it's not throwing shade at you or anything. But it's
No,
just
no,
that's just like I'd be like I don't know if I would be more upset if you didn't play that way. I think I would be more upset if you didn't play that way. Then it's like, what the fuck are you doing even using this character? Because that's how you play him, you know.
no,
Just
it's
yeah.
that's the best. It's slimy as hell. It's and that's it's not that I like. Don't, I feel bad about playing slimy. If I can play slimy in some way,
No, no,
I
don't feel
yeah,
bad. Why would you feel
I
bad?
wouldn't.
That's
I don't like because you see people like the slimy shit they do, and you know, like no, I'm not a. If you can do it, definitely do it. I guess I just have like a for some reason this thing about Dudley that I just his style and stuff that I really like. But yeah, I definitely think come next weekend. I should really just no matter what character I'm playing, no matter who I'm playing, just play Denjin Ryu because it's the generally it's going to be the better matchup for whoever, right?
well, I mean, this is not to say that a lot of the players there aren't going to know how to play against Denjin
For
Ryu. They
sure, no,
are,
I get that.
uh,
That for
but one of the things that I think doesn't really get discussed enough when we talk about Third Strike in particular, mainly because the game isn't really all that active because there isn't a regular tournament scene. It's just how important it is to have tournament experience.
sure.
Like one of the bigger controversies in the last few years, when it comes to the Third Strike scene, is like how well would like certain established players that used to play the game but don't play the game anymore, how well would they do against like say people who are currently grinding and are like up to the technology, you know what I mean? And I'm talking about players like, for example, like Justin or Ricky or even Chris G, who plays Third Strike all the time, right? Like if he's at a tournament and there's Third Strike, in all likelihood, unless the pot for Marvel is like
Oh
$500,000,
yeah,
he's gonna
yeah,
play
for
Third
sure.
Strike.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, seen that.
And so like I feel like we don't talk about that enough,
Like how
because like you could be really good in casuals, and you could be really good like in sets and just kind of and things like that. But in a specific format, how well can you maintain your composure?
absolutely no.
How well can you? Yeah.
You're so. And I think a lot of people are way cockier than they have the right to be in that regards. Like to think who they could beat, and hey, I could beat this guy. Like he hasn't played for 10 years, and this kind of thing. And when like he hasn't played this game, but he plays other games and he plays at like a really high level. And like you said, I think that just being able to keep your composure, being able to handle all the nerves all
Mhm.
that comes into play. That you some people learn faster than others, but that's something that just doesn't happen. Like you have to
You have to have.
grind.
Yeah.
You have to like grind in the tournament to like get good at that. And if you don't have the
Hmm.
experience, then that's like a real hard edge for them, for whoever does have that experience.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think and this is not just the Third Strike scene, but I think a lot of scenes need to have sort of more respect for how important that type of thing is.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Oh, oh,
like there are a lot of people obviously that are really good with their execution, and so forth and so on. They're technically sound, but definitely the mental aspect of the game, I think, is really underexplored, or I guess
for
we
sure.
would call it.
I think in like a community like Third Strike where you're at, it's not as active. It's hard to see that, for anyone who
Yeah.
is grinding the game and who has this love for the game, but they're not really going to tournaments that much because there just aren't any. And that's like, for example, for me, for like the new versions of Guilty Gear since they've come out, I haven't. We used to grind old Guilty Gear like crazy amount of time, and now this new one, we don't. I don't grind it ever. I just go to tournaments and I kind of let what we're talking about carry me, and it doesn't always carry
Mhm.
me, but sometimes it does, and sometimes it carries me far. And it's not my general knowledge of the game isn't very good. My technical skill in the game isn't very good, but my nerves are fucking good. So like sometimes that's
Mhm.
just enough to like beat good
No.
players. Like, and that's just I think really speaking to the point that you made. Like it's just I don't practice the game. I don't really, you know what I mean? Like I don't really play the game that much ever. I just go to the tournaments, and I'm not saying I do good a lot, but sometimes I do pretty good, especially for like the amount of time I'm putting into this game. And I just attribute that completely to the amount of tournaments I used to go to, and like the hardening of whatever you call it, like your nerves and your
Mhm.
composure, all that stuff.
And I'm glad that you were comfortable enough to admit that, David, because I think in the last few years, there's been a lot of vitriol against players like yourself who admit that, hey, I don't really grind this game the way other people do, and it's like, and I think this is not my personal feeling, but I can only speculate that I guess it just kind of rubs like really hardcore Third Strike players the wrong way. Like, oh, you're not really a Third Strike player because you don't grind as much as I do. But personally for me, like, you sit down and you play that game, then you're a Third Strike player.
Right? I mean,
you know what I mean? Like I'm not like what this isn't like. This isn't this isn't the Freemasons.
Right?
You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know why there's such a, I don't know. It's just
no. I think that like speaks to like something that's should be spoken to more, especially for these scenes that are sort of under the radar, or like just scenes that aren't the dominant ones. It kills me to see, and this happens in like in the other scenes I'm in, where just people are real. Not everybody, but there's players who will be very standoffish to people who like aren't about it like they are, and I think that's completely the wrong way to go about it. Like, if you want more players to come in, you have to be like way more welcoming, and like you said, like if you play the game, then you're a Third Strike player, and that's like for sure like the attitude to have if you want the game to thrive, because no one likes someone that's stuck up asshole. Like I don't. So like, I mean, personally, I always try to like not be that way, even though I'm sure I slip up sometimes, but I try to consciously like remember, like, hey, at least they're playing the game. At least they're doing this thing that I love. So
Yeah.
it's
I think that's really the rub, right? Because there are some players like you and myself, like, as long as more and more people are playing the game, that's fine. But I really do feel like that there are other players, and obviously I'm not going to name any of these players in the Third Strike scene, who are okay with, like, yeah, you know what? I don't care if more new people play the game, as long as the people who do play the game play it at a high level, and that they play it, and I can totally see like the validity in their viewpoint, but just because I understand your view doesn't mean I have to agree with it. You know what I mean? But so I kind of see that that's sort of a divide.
I mean, personally, like, I don't see, like, I would like argue on that, because I feel like if you want the game to if you want to get better, the strongest way to get better is to grow your scene, because the more people, the more likelihood somebody's going to come up. There's going to be a come up. There's going to be a player that you didn't expect that gets good. That challenge. You understand what I mean? Like,
prodigy.
Yeah, exactly. And how are you going to get a prodigy if you shun them? Like, if you don't give them the chance. So
like the next Cameron could have walked away already. Right?
I'm sure he did.
He's probably going to be a DBZ player,
right?
Now, right? Like, it's
already. I would say more than likely he's already a League of Legends player. But
he's already probably playing LOL.
Yep,
and
I'm
making
sure that's
tons
what's going
of money.
on.
Yeah. So, we're sort of running out of time, David. I know you gotta go because you have your Thursday gathering. But before we plug some stuff, and obviously I want to give you a chance to, give some shout outs to whoever you want to give to. We have this segment that we run during every podcast, and quite honestly, I know that there are some people in the chat who only listen to the podcast just for this segment, but that's okay. Whatever gets you on the stream. So basically the segment's called Pack It Up, David. And what I do is I scour the internet for some of the more, I guess what we could call not so pro Third Strike moments, either on YouTube or Twitch. And so I find 5 clips, 5 nominees, if you will, and I ask the people to tweet me and tell me what their favorite Pack It Up clip is. So you've never seen it, right, David? You've never seen this? Okay, great. I love having guests who've never seen this before, because it's always, it always feels like, nothing feels like your first time, right?
Right. No,
so I'm popping your Pack It Up cherry, no homo, right? So okay, so all right, people are starting to rev up now. So without further ado, guys, here's this week's version of edition of Pack It Up. All right, there's Ryu here. Pack it up. Okay, so nominee number 1. I really think I should make a collection of these, but there's that 2-frame jab of Chun wreaking havoc at a recent Spanish tournament. Actually,
Oh, wow.
that jab, like the bane of, everyone knows how bad that jab is. Nominee number 2. There's a lot of ways to avoid the situation, but that wasn't one of them. Watches this Ryu player inexplicably neutral jumps and then presses jab.
Yeah, wait.
In what dimension is that going to
It's gotta be. It's
do
gotta be.
anything
It's gotta be. He
productive?
did it on accident, right? You don't do that on purpose.
Yeah. So speaking of the Midwest,
Oh my
shout outs
God.
to the Poverty Game Night boys, who are almost always playing Third Strike inebriated, and so
Yeah,
that clip just speaks for itself.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's a drunk ass player right there. That's like,
I don't know who deserves the Pack It Up award, the Dudley or the Ken. But
I would say the Dudley, just because
Yeah.
he literally just sat there.
yeah, he just sat there. Nominee number 4. This is not how to play the Fireball game in Third Strike.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that doesn't work. But fireballs are good in Third Strike. You just have to know how to use them. And then nominee number 5, yet another very humiliating perfect round. Watches this Syrian player catches Makoto jumping up in the air, and that obviously leads to death, if you will. So yeah, I feel like shit whenever I get caught by that. It's really bad. It's
I didn't know that was a thing.
yeah, that's pretty funny. So anyway, guys, tell me what you guys think is your favorite. Tweet me. Send me a tweet on Twitter, or let me know in the chat which clip was your favorite. Which clip do you think deserves the Pack It Up award this week, David?
I feel like 3 is the obvious answer.
Yeah, 3.
Like there's that is it. It's like I don't understand how that. I mean, he literally just sat there for like 2 supers and then got thrown at the end. Like what? Like
No, he ate a throw and then he ate a Shoryu.
Oh yeah, that's right. Okay, it's like I mean, he was drinking a beer or like texting or something. I don't know. He's holding down back and looking away. I don't. That's the only explanation I get. While drunk, while being drunk.
Yeah, I'm with you, Felipe. I like number 5 too, but to each their own, right? Everyone has their unique taste when it comes to crappy Third Strike. But that's the thing, David, and this is kind of I guess the theme of this podcast has been just how good Third Strike is.
Yeah.
Just both from like a player's perspective and a spectator perspective, because even like the shitty stuff is hype.
Yeah, I mean,
like when people fuck up in Third Strike, it's like it's that's even hype.
It's a
when people fuck up in 5, it's just like
exactly.
It's like
there's the game has a natural hypeness to it, and I don't know if I would say natural, but it's because of the game design, the way that it's good. It's like you can't help but like shit happens. It's like it's so much fun to watch, and it's easy to follow too. It's really easy to like, oh hey, it's easy to like Street Fighter to follow 5, but it's just so much more hype and intricate and fun.
Yeah, and I just wish more and more people would realize that maybe the reason why Third Strike is never going to die is because there's so many ways to enjoy it.
Yeah.
There's just so many ways to love it and to like it.
Agreed.
Whether as a player or as a spectator.
100%.
Yeah. So we're I guess we're at the end of the podcast, David. And so before you go, is there anything you want to say? Any shout outs you want to give?
I mean, shout outs to like my Nebraska people. Like the most.
Cool.
That's young and new, old and new, because there's definitely a huge range at this point because we've been playing games for like 30 years now. Some of them, I guess, not quite me, but that's literally the case for some people. And that's it. That's just my Nebraska scene. That's it. That's who I want to give a shout out to. Thanks, guys. You guys are the best, man.
Well, good luck at TFC, David. I hope from one old man to another, you make some salty young buck salty, some young buck salty at the tournament.
Yeah.
It'll make the whole trip worth it.
That's my goal. That's my goal. I just want to, like I said, I just want to parry some shit and do some cool shit. And hey, I'm happy. I just want to look cool for even just a little bit. Hopefully a lot of
even
it,
just
even just a little bit.
All right. So before we go, guys, remember that you've been watching the Mutant XPerience. I run this podcast to give people like David Q and the Third Strike scene a chance to promote themselves, their scenes, and their events. And so, if there's any guests that you think I should interview, let me know. Once again, TFC, it's happening next weekend. Last day to register is tomorrow by midnight. Smash GG. Y'all already know how to do it. 70 plus players already registered. Get on it. What are you waiting for? Make plans to be there. A couple other events that are on the horizon. We have the Red Bulls Battleground, which is a SF5 tournament. The funny thing about this tournament, I heard, David, is that you have to sign up for 5, and then you're automatically signed up for Third Strike.
What?
I don't know how that works.
Is that like Capcom's doing? Or...
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. It's by Red Bull, so anyway, that same weekend in London, Gutter Trash Volume 8. You know, speaking of communities that are stepping up their Third Strike game, they're gonna have their latest iteration of their tournament series on the same weekend. Shoutouts to Surge and Arcadium for running Monday Night Fightcade for Turbos on Mondays. Third Strike. He used to run Third Strike, but not anymore. But but the one person who runs Third Strike is AC Slayer, along with Harov and Kazi. They run Third Strike twice a week, Wednesdays, ranking battles. I was on there yesterday. I got my shit pushed in by an online Remy player. Good shit. I'm gonna have to. I'm kind of festering in the salt. You know, it's been a while. I've been thinking about that matchup on my commute to work. But on Sundays they do like a random tournament, and so it's a lot of fun. Every other Thursday, Lost Ark, Greensboro Arcade. They run they run a stream, and they've been really successful in terms of getting newer players to pick up the game, and so that's awesome. Shoutouts to Violent City, which is the venue in West London that holds all of the Gutter Trash and UK Third Strike events. And so shoutouts to James Sendo who runs that venue. And you know, once again, guys, you've been watching the Mutant XPerience podcast. Just a quick programming note. Next Thursday, you guys are in for a treat. Not that you weren't in for a treat, obviously, this week, David.
No,
but
okay.
yeah. But next week, next Thursday, we're gonna return to our normally scheduled time, 9 p.m. Eastern, because my guest next week will be none other than the child turned man beast known as Kenan Black. He's gonna be on the stream next week, and so that's definitely a podcast that I'm definitely looking forward to. And so one more thing before we go, shout outs to Hayao, aka Chris, owner of iFix Machine, which was a computer store / gaming center. Unfortunately, Chris had to close down a few months ago, but I'm happy to report that he will be opening up a new location in Brooklyn. And so, you know, iFix Machine has been a firm supporter of not just Third Strike, but a lot of, you know, these old school poverty games. If you ever come out to New York, David, you know, I totally recommend that you not just go to Next Level, but also to IFM, where they really, you know, have a focus on retro games and old school games. And so I just wanted to send the shout outs and congratulations to Chris, the owner of IFM, for locking down a new location. And I'm definitely looking forward to seeing Third Strike events emanating from that new venue. So once again, guys, thanks for watching the Mutant XPerience. Thanks again, David, for being on the stream. I know you got to get out of here and bust some heads in that Marvel versus Marvel Infinite.
I mean, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
But it was my pleasure being here. Thanks for having me here. It was fun.
All right, then. So thanks again, David. Thanks again for everyone who joined the podcast. And I'll see you guys next week with Kenan Black. See you guys later.